Good morning, Your Excellency, Prof. Sarah Ayang Agbo, and good morning to our distinguished speakers drawn from across the geographical zones across the African continent. My name is Esther Akinlabi. I'm currently serving as the director of the Pan-African University for Life and Health Sciences in Ibadan, Nigeria. And welcome to this webinar, Women in Science, the first of the series of many to come. This is a concept of Her Excellency, Prof. Sarah Ayang. You will hear more from her. As an introduction, I would just like to say that women generally are usually in the forefront of fighting a good fight. And COVID-19 pandemic, it has affected all facets of our lives, is not an exemption. And on this note, I want to say welcome to this webinar. Please note that there are interpreters for English and French, and this service will be available to all participants. On that note, I would like to seize this opportunity to welcome Her Excellency, Prof. Sarah Ayang Agbo, the Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology for the African Union Commission, to give her opening remarks. Thank you. Over to you, Commissioner, please.
Thank you very much. Here's my speech. Closing remarks. Thank you very much. Good morning. We're having a problem with the internet. I have to use different ones. So good morning. Good morning, distinguished participants, distinguished professors, distinguished women of Africa. It is a pride for me to bring all of us together, knowing that we have a lot to give this continent, which we are already doing. So on behalf of the chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Dr. Musa Faki Mahamat, I welcome each and every one of us to this webinar. It is the first of its kind on the continent. The theme is winning the fight against COVID-19. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is the first session of our several series of webinar meeting on women in science, an occasion for us to rub minds on how we can jointly fight or win the fight against COVID-19. Before I proceed, let me take this moment to commiserate with families around the nations of Africa and globally that have lost loved ones amid the COVID-19 pandemic. It is sure that this is an unprecedented time, and we are having a series of things happening around us that we cannot understand. And COVID itself has become a myriad of problems because it has not only affected health, but has also affected all sectors of life. The unexpected pandemic that suddenly shut down our normal world to a new normal, where we need to do business as unusual. We need to change waka, as one writer wrote in Cameroon, the late Bate Bison. You change waka, that when the drum beats changes, you need to change your dancing steps. And now we have to change our dancing steps. With the outbreak of COVID-19 and its costly impact, it appears the world was taken unawares that even the most powerful nations of the world are helpless. Why? COVID is no respecter of man. Whether you are rich, you are poor, disabled or able, whatever it is, it can affect anybody. So it has brought each and every one of us to the same level, and we need to take the same precautions. So now our health systems have been questioned because those who could afford money to travel abroad initially to take care of themselves can no longer travel with the lockdown and the shutdown of borders. So we need to do business as unusual. We need to look back into ourselves and make sure that we have put things in place for the future, not only for us who are capable, but even for those masses who do not have anything. But yet, when COVID strikes, it's the same symptoms. is the same problem. So COVID-19 has caused an unprecedented impact on the nation's economy, people's lives, families, and communities. And you see that our children, the 70% of our population, they are the most affected because they are no longer going to school. Now we are seeing many of the girls being raped, becoming pregnant. What are we going to do about these issues? And efforts to contain the virus and save lives should be intensified as governments plan stronger, more coordinated measures to absorb the growing economic blow. Individuals and scientists should also join hands to overcome this pandemic. And when it comes from women, it becomes more powerful. We cannot overemphasize the role of science in combating COVID-19. The pandemic is ravaging the whole world. Is a clear evidence of lack of adequate science and technology to deal with the pandemic. Right from the STI infrastructure to human capital and knowledge that is urgently required to respond to the scourge are insufficient. The pandemic has exposed the scientific and technological weaknesses of the world at large, and Africa in particular, to deal with the pandemic. With COVID-19, efforts are needed for rapid research and development and innovation responses policies and Afrocentric programs to boost R&D activities in 3 key areas. The first is diagnosis and testing. Second, therapeutic and treatment. Third, vaccines and local production of personal protective equipment. 3, medical supplies and looking inwards to explore the use of our rich biodiversity and traditional medicine. At the level of the African Union, an extraordinary virtual meeting of the third STCEST, that is the Specialized Technical Committee on Education, Science and Technology, ministerial session was held on the 30th of April 2020, with the aim of the meeting was to promote and maintain a high-level African ministerial dialogue to facilitate consensus on the education, science, technology, and innovation response to COVID-19 and adopt urgent, radical, and transformative measures to ensure continuity of education on the continent and mitigate the disruptions caused by the coronavirus disease by also investing and capacitating the STI of Africa, even through the African Scientific Research Innovation Council, ASRIC, that was launched 2 years ago, because ASRIC came up with 4 pillars on mitigating the scourge and the effects of COVID-19 in the continent. Another webinar with Ministers of Education, Science and Technology was held on the 18th of August, and this is to tell you that all hands are on board for this fight, and so we as women in science cannot be left behind. This webinar is therefore a deliberate attempt to air the voice of our African women scientists in the fight against COVID-19, understanding that inclusivity in actions is necessary to win this fight. Inclusivity of efforts is necessary for the transformation of the Africa we want, based on the vision of Agenda 2063, that vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa driven by its own competent and skilled citizens able to play in the global arena. And we know that definitely for us to be able to consolidate and get Africa to where we want by 2063, we cannot leave STI, R&D, and innovation out of it. And even when we speak STI, women are not dullards. Women have the brains, and we can also do it. Like we say, African girls can code. Now I'm saying African women scientists can also code and decode COVID-19. And it is my pleasure that on this panel that we're starting, for the first ever Continental Women in Science that we have created, the person, one of the women who won the African Continental Scientific Award of the Kwame Nkrumah, Professor Chinedum Babalola, is on board. Professor Theresia Nko Akeji is also a renowned Then we also are thinking on how we must promote our African traditional medicine, because the African pharmacopoeia can also respond to COVID if we can take the right clinical protocols to get us to where we need to go to. Because we have traditional
Okay, it seems we've lost the commissioner, and we will move on. At a later time, we will give her the opportunity to complete her opening remarks, and then yeah, she will still have the opportunity to have to give closing remarks anyway. So I think she can take up the time at a later time to finish up her opening remarks. We sincerely apologize. Okay, Prof. Sarah, are you back online to complete your talk? Prof. Sarah, Your Excellency, I see you trying to join back. I think we're still trying to have her back online. With that, I think we can proceed to have the, let's move on. I want to say thank you to Her Excellency for the opening remarks for this first in the series of this Women in Science webinar. We really appreciate your passion, your drive, and your commitment towards science and technology, and also in the fight against the COVID pandemic. Thank you. I'll now go on to introduce our first speaker of this webinar series, Women in Science, Winning the Fight Against COVID-19, Perspectives from African Women Scientists. The first speaker for us this morning is Professor Catherine Ngila. Professor Catherine Ngila is a full professor of chemistry. She is currently serving as the acting executive director of the African Academy of Sciences in Kenya. Thank you. Over to Prof. Catherine, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Esther, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, no, thank you very much. I think I shared before I could open my microphone. Let me first start by thanking everyone for attending this very important webinar organized by the African Union Commission. Thank you, Madam Facilitator, Professor Esther. I would like also to thank Her Excellency, Madam Professor Sarah Agbo, that is the High Commissioner, the Commissioner for Human Resource and Science and Technology. I would like also to recognize my co-author, Dr. Margaret Cheru from Riara University in Nairobi. I'd like to thank all the delegates from wherever they are tuned in. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. my fellow speakers who are also co-presenting with us. And also, I would like also now to briefly look at the my introduction in terms of the presentation outline, looking at basically the background of the African Academy of Sciences, historical backgrounds, the mandate, looking at the global overview of the impact of COVID, global perspectives, looking at World Bank, UNDP, UNESCO, response by the African countries, and of course the response from the African Academy of Sciences. Also looking at the research capacity, that is what the African Academy of Sciences is trying to do to organize. Looking at some of the gender gaps that do exist in education in science and how they have been enhanced by the COVID pandemic, and how are we going to win the fight against COVID. Looking at, as an example of women in Africa, in particular, look at a case point or case study of UNESCO STEM mentors in Nairobi, that is the regional office for East Africa, and also the way forward, looking at what different countries have been able to present. And so looking at the African Academy of Sciences, where I'm seated as the acting executive director, and also on a leave of absence from Riara University, where I'm the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. Now, coming back to the African Academy of Sciences, we have got three mandates, tripartite mandate, that is recognizing science, advisory capacity or think tanks, and also implementing science. In a nutshell, we have got about 417 fellows, 72 women, which represents about 17%. That is very low. So women really need to pull up their socks so that we can be able to be counted on the table of the African Academy of Sciences in terms of think tanks and in terms of implementation of science. So in total, we have got about 345. But we also have other categories of the fellows. We have got the founding fellows. As most of you are aware, this was founded by a number of researchers and academicians, who are headed by a Professor Tom Odhiambo, 1985, where they went to Italy in Trieste to chart the way forward in terms of the foundation and also the establishment of the academy in 1985. But we also have governing council. So that is the bigger structure of the academy, apart from the fellows and founding fellows, honorary fellows, associates. Associates are fellows who come from outside the country, but they have got a lot of interest. These are non-Africans. We also, of course, have Africans in the diaspora. We also have the fellows themselves that I started by talking. And we have got affiliates who are not fellows, but they are early career researchers moving towards being counted as established researchers. We have got different areas of research, agriculture, and microbiome resistance, and climate change, environment, and many others. Health is one of the biggest portfolio that we are running at the academy. And going forward, we're looking at the strategic plan for the business of the academy, which is usually aided by, rather we have got a platform, we call it Accelerating Science in Africa, that is AESA, Alliance of Accelerating Science in Africa. I'm having problems, sorry, Madam Chair, trying to move my slides. Looks like my laptop has frozen, but I'll still continue. So we started by looking at what is happening at the academy. Obviously, there's a lot of, a contribution of the academy, by the Academy of Sciences in various ways. But before even I go there, I would like also to look at what is happening, the response to COVID-19 by the African countries, starting with the African Union, African Development Bank. If you look at the African Union, there's a strategy for member states, for example, looking at issues such as disaster preparedness, management, continental framework, national development frameworks, African risk capacity, multinational enterprises, business, STI institution capacity strengthening, and finance, monetary affairs, and so forth and so on. We also have got African Development Bank that is looking at how we are going to fund various sectors, looking at West Africa, North Africa, and the kind of funding that has been allocated. Sorry, Madam Sarah, having challenges here, trying to get the screens on because I think the screen was freezing.
Sorry, Prof. Ngila, you can, okay, you want to reshare. I communicated to Mitch to start sharing your step, but okay, now you can proceed. Thank you.
Okay, all right, okay. Yeah, so I was talking about the various contributions, and I think I jumped to the first slide, which is looking at the strategic plan and business plan for the African Academy of Sciences, looking at the different goals, such as building research and development, leadership and environments, supporting development, innovation, and science-driven entrepreneur culture, looking at identification of rising stars in terms of researches, and also critical targets that we have. So the global overview of the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, we're looking at some of the statistics that are already established. Almost everybody knows what is happening in the world in terms of global numbers, more than 23 million globally, about more than 800 deaths. In Africa, we are looking at about actually more than 800,000 total infected. Deaths are almost coming to 8,000 deaths. In Kenya, in particular, where we have got more than 32,000 total infected with a lot of deaths. So basically, if you look at the, in terms of funding, we see that it is going to be affecting a lot of, basically the pandemic is going to affect a lot of sectors, particularly in health and socioeconomic. About 5% is predicted by World Bank that we are going to have a contraction of about 5.2% in terms of global GDP in 2020. Looking at some of the deep recessions triggered by the pandemic, health and economics, like I've said, schooling has stopped, fragmentation of global trade. In terms of mitigation, definitely we have to strengthen public health systems, address challenges that are posed by this pandemic. UNDP countries as advised countries to implement what they call the temporary basic income, TBI, because it is predicted that about 1% of the GDP will have to go into mitigating the COVID. Looking at the global organizations like World Bank, what they have indicated about more than 3.3 billion, that are living below the poverty line, which is $5.50 per day. Looking that should have been the figure pre-COVID, but after COVID, we are going to see a big number going down in terms of poverty. About 548 million people will be affected in different regions. Looking at the developed countries, more than 20 million who are living in poverty, 5 million that are going to be added into poverty level. North Africa, as well as Middle East, 98 that are living in poverty, 550 million will be added. Looking at the sub-Saharan Africa, almost 900 million in poverty, 45 million will be added into poverty. South Asia, currently about 1.5 billion. Again, 129 million will be injected into the poverty line. East Asia and Pacific also in the same category, 950. 240 are going to be added into the poverty line. So definitely the future is looking bleak, but we should not lose hope. I started by talking about the contribution by the African Union, and I think I've talked about that. With the African Development Bank, insisting that we really have to get our ducks in a row. Looking at the pandemic response by the African Academy of Sciences, because this is the institution that is harboring all the scientists, distinguished scientists and think tanks in terms of the continental. We have had a number of platforms, like in March, we had hosted a webinar. In April, we also had another webinar where we also requested different scientists from all over to submit their responses in terms of the priority areas. We came up with about 17 priority areas, and that the link is already shown there. Funding is one of the key things that we do, functions that we do under the programs, which is sponsored by various organizations, and I will show that later. So we have got about, about 17 priority areas specific for Africa identified and listed against the global priorities. The impact of COVID-19 on women is not being spared. Of course, women sit in communities where both men and women sit there. But particularly today, I would like to highlight cases of women in Africa. And I'm sure also this could also be faced by other countries, other continents in Asia and also in the developed world, where gender-based killing, discrimination, poverty, and all that. I think people cannot stomach each other sitting in the house, particularly during the lockdown before we started moving from one level to another, that people are getting fed up with each other. I was listening to some of the radios in Kenya and seeing how they are impacted, basically the impact of COVID on various sectors, high death rates. For some reason, we see a high number of men dying compared to women. So that means that women are going to be left as widows to take care of the families. And of course, continuing with the what is happening, some of the mitigations like the Association for Development of Education in Africa, with collaboration with the African Development Bank, some of the initiatives they are putting in place in the Academy of Sciences with the partnership with the Department of, for International Development in the UK, where we came up with a report, a policy brief, to look at the review of the impact of physical distancing in Africa. Definitely Africa is being affected differently from most other regions, but generally we are all affected in one way or the other, where people are losing jobs and so forth and so on. Gaps that do exist, particularly when it comes now to the education. Women who particularly have become mothers and also teachers because children are seated at home. What that then means is that you have to juggle between being a mother as well as being a professional. That has impacted on the output of women, particularly in research and education. Grassa, Michelle, and co-authors have come up with, presented a paper on the women that have been hit, emerging evidence of the International Labour Organizations on the impact of the COVID-19. And that was published in the UN Economic Commission for Africa. In Kenya, particularly, I looked at the pregnancy, the rate of pregnancies. We are told that between age of 10 and 14, more than 20,000 girls aged that age have either become pregnant or they have already become mothers. About 20,000, more than 24,000 between the age of 15 and 19 women, girls who are in school. And so we are going to see how UNESCO, East Africa Regional Office is mitigating this in terms of STEM mentors that are, composed of women professionals in the STEM areas. A study by the Organization for Women in Science in Developing World. I've also looked at the statistics as shown on the screen there, the delayed or reduced activities by women scientists, how it is impacting on that. How are we going to win the fight against COVID-19? Looking at some of the areas, we know that it has been documented that women particularly lag behind when it comes to the fourth industrial revolution, which is driven by automation in various sectors. But those women who have managed to break through in the digital space, they are really making a big impact. I was just listening to the CNN Africa, Inside Africa, how women in Nigeria are really making a big name for themselves as DJs, film industry, agribusiness. In Kenya, we have got the textile industry, whereby the county where I come from, the Kitui County, women stopped making clothes and started making the face masks, which they're also earning money out of that. If you look at the UNESCO project by the Women Mentors in STEM, What we have is that we have got a group of women that are led by Dr. Alice Ochanda, who is also the chairperson of the Gender Affairs at the East Africa Regional Office, but that office is headed by Madam Anne-Therese Dongjata, who is the director of the multi-sectoral office in the UNESCO, that is the East Africa region. And I was saying that it would be nice to know whether the rest of other regions, UNESCO regions, are also having these initiatives of having STEM mentors, women who are professionals, just so that we can be able to keep it going, you know, for young girls as well as also boys who are seated at home, girls getting pregnant and so forth and so on. So the question is, what is the way forward? So definitely looking at what has been advised by the African Union, looking at the structural socioeconomic strategies for African countries to curb also teenage pregnancies. In terms of funding, we know that money has been allocated. African Development Bank has allocated money, or rather is planning to allocate money in different countries. So let me just urge that this money should be used. You know, priorities should be given to women, girls, youth, and aged citizens before we even roll out anything else. In Kenya, we have seen the community-based learning where Kenya Teachers Commission is also engaging that this program should be rolling out very soon, so that even when children are seated at home, they can go to hubs where they can be taught life skills, you know, agriculture and many others, not necessarily the curriculum that is already in place. I've also talked about the UNESCO Regional Office, what they are making impact, empowering women and girls. Information ICT is something that we really need to strengthen, because we can see digital space is the way to go. Recasting the visions for African countries. In Kenya, we have got Kenya Vision 2030. But now the question is if we are going to really make it, looking at the big four pillar agenda for the president: manufacturing, housing, healthcare, and food security. Are we really going to manage? African Union definitely has got strategies for member states in terms of, I talked about disaster preparedness, financial, monetary affairs, and so forth and so on. Research, infrastructure, online teaching. We have seen that Association for African Universities, currently we are being taught by Dr. Violet Mapuku, who is the director for quality assurance. I listened to our presentations, which we also started by listening to how to log into online teaching, online learning, and so forth and so on. African Research Universities Alliance, ARUA, is also doing that in Kenya. We have got a Kenya Education Network, KENET, that is also assisting digital space in terms of learning and research. The question now is, how much do the African countries invest in R&D? The World Bank says less than 1% globally, and which is really not very nice. So Africa really needs to pull it out. We are going to have vaccination, vaccine development, and many other related researches. These are the partners that are supporting the African Academy of Sciences, the ISA stands, I said before, Alliance for Acceleration of Science in Africa programs, well sponsored. But this money, when we get sponsored, we roll it out to African researchers all over the continent, and we would like to thank all the partners that have been able to assist us. Thank you very much, Madam Facilitator, and I know I took a little bit of time because of challenges. Thank you. Madam Facilitator, are we there? Hello. Thank you very much. I think I will stop there, Dr. Monica. I'll stop there for now.
And thank you, Professor Catherine Ingela, for that excellent presentation. While we is she back? I think we have lost her, but while we're waiting for her to come back, I will kindly like to present the next, to introduce the next speaker in the person of Professor Teresa Nku Akinje. She is the Vice Chancellor of one of the universities in Yaoundé. I guess my commissioner can help me introduce her properly because I don't have her profile here, right here with me. Over to you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. But under instructions is just what is on the first flyer we are doing. Professor Teresia Nkoa-Kenji is the Vice Chancellor of the University of Bamenda Northwest Region. She is also one of the board members of the Association of African University, as well as a member of RUFORUM, on the executive board of RUFORUM. She's a microbiologist. Is it parasitologist or microbiologist? Please, my boss, don't be angry that I'm not saying it rightly. So we will now call her on board to give her presentation. Thank you very much. Professor Teresia Nkoa-Kenji, I hope she does not have problems with, yeah.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for the introduction. I want to extend to you my very warm greetings, and also to the members of the panel. And I welcome all participants. I thank you for giving me the honor to be part of the very first series that you've organized, Women in Science. So what I'm going to talk about today is just an overview of women's response to COVID-19 in Cameroon. My presentation will just give us a little bit of a background, just as I've outlined on the slide, and then we will look at the various ways that women are coping strategies being used against COVID-19, challenges, and conclusion. All of us are aware that the first case was identified in Wuhan in December 2019, and it was on March 11th that WHO declared COVID-19 a pandemic. Before that declaration, Cameroon had registered her first positive case in the capital city of Yaoundé on the 24th of February 2020. And so, and that was also the first case in Central Africa. As we can see from the statistics on the slide, Cameroon is in Central Africa, and of all the Central African countries, Cameroon has the most confirmed cases and more deaths. So why women and COVID-19? I'm sharing with you this slide from a close friend of mine, Dr. Lotsmat Fonjo, who is an expert in gender issues. And this slide helps us understand why women are actually at the front line, because the triple role of women require that they reproduce, they're productive, and they do community service. So in their reproductive role, they serve as home managers, caregivers, child bearers, child rearing. Then you go to the productive role where they are supposed to do whatever to generate some income. You find them as farmers, as teachers, as nurses, traders, child bearers, you know, community, entertainment, Women are the forefront of organizing weddings, cried-eyes, as we call them in Cameroon, funerals, death celebrations. So they're everywhere. And yet, as Professor Njila told us, she gave us statistics that really highlights the poverty, especially when it concerns women. You know, they have less access to education, healthcare, you know, but they're everywhere. Now, the effects of COVID-19 on women in Cameroon. This pandemic has affected women in diverse ways. And a lot of the women, even in the formal sector, they have lost their jobs. Many women are teachers. Those in the private sector have not been paid for several years now. Professor Gila talked about the gender-based violence, which is something that is really worrisome because number of cases keep increasing. There's the lockdown, there's the frustration, there are men without work, and there's all this psychological violence on women. Our commissioner talked about unwanted pregnancies. Most of our adolescent girls find themselves pregnant. All of this is increasing the burden, particularly on the women, on the mothers. So it is really something for us to worry about. And in Cameroon, we have a situation of the Anglophone crisis, where for 4 years now, in the Anglophone regions, the Northwest and the Southwest, there have been this conflict, and we end up having so many women who are internally displaced. And this just, again, weighs on the effects that COVID-19 is causing on women. Now, so what are women doing, you know, to help in at least mitigating the effects of the COVID-19? And I want to say here that we have quite a few women's organizations in Cameroon that are bringing awareness. This has been fantastic because they not only educate the women, but they go out there to the markets, to the hospitals, to the orphanages. They go on the radio, they go on television, they do talk shows, and they distribute face masks, hand sanitizers, detergents, just to make sure that the family can at least practice the prevention measures that the government has put in place. And some of their posters, as I've shared with you on this screen, are very rich, you know, very clear posters that talk on preventive measures. You have a group like Bella, one of the women's organization groups. You see her here distributing mass pamphlets, and some of these pamphlets are really specific to women. You see here women caregivers, pregnant women, the buy and sell them, that's the women who do small businesses, they buy and they sell, female health workers, gender-based violence, they educate on everything. And what is so good about these different groups that we have in Cameroon, social church groups, that they have women from all walks of life. And these women in these different groups bring a lot because they carry their expertise and enhance the messages that are being delivered to these different groups of women. Now, when it comes to economic and educational empowerment of women and girls, because we know that COVID-19 has brought along with it poverty, but then what are we going to do? These women have taken upon themselves to train other women and young girls on the production of cloth masks, how to make soap at home, how to produce hand sanitizers. So in this way, the women are using these products that they make to advance preventive measures against COVID, and at the same time, selling the cloth masks and the hand sanitizers and the soap that they produce. So the home now is the surest school, because mothers are now teachers, teaching their children at home to cope with the loss of lessons during the lockdown period, and also delivering lessons on COVID-19 preventive measures. I just want to salute our Dean of the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Bamenda. She's Professor Gloria Ashutang-Tang, who I think is one of two women that are in the National Task Force Against COVID-19, and she has done a wonderful job in sensitization, giving us the facts, and she's even brought in a COVID-19 course in the curriculum for the medical students. And I acknowledge also the University of Bamenda female lecturers that are doing a lot in sensitization of the students, and of course in their various groups, the population on preventive measures. There are challenges, a lot of challenges, despite the efforts of women to reach out to the community. There are many women now who, because of the fatigue, people are tired of the lockdown, people are tired of COVID, and more you see them already, getting very lax. Their children are now out on the street selling. And what is happening here is maybe just propagating COVID-19 again. And so this is a big challenge, physical distancing not being respected. A lot of people are just tired of wearing the masks. So what are we going to do about this? We have women in the rural settings who think that COVID-19 is a myth. And those, some of their religious beliefs is like, just pray and this thing will go away. So, we have all of those challenges. And before I conclude, I just want to share some statistics with you here. The last report of August 12 shows that of about 12,000 COVID-19 patients diagnosed by PCR, about 5,125 of them were females. And of the 224 deaths among these PCR positive cases, 145 were men and 79 were women. So based on these statistics, the lethality rate is 1.54% for women and 2% for men. So what is happening? Are the women doing something better? And as Professor Gila said, more men are dying, so leaving the women to be widows. That's another challenge. And so to conclude, I've just given an overview of the situation in Cameroon, how women are coping. Some are bringing up strategies to mitigate infection, while others are now tired and propagating the spread. So recommendations, what do we do here? We just need to look for collective fights. Now it has to be collective. We have to tap from the fountain of experiences from the women. There is a need to tackle what is going on in the rural settings, bring more women out there to sensitize the population there. There has to be a change in mindset, and we need to do more decentralization of testing and treatment centers. So thank you very much. I don't see anybody on the screen here, so I hope I didn't lose everybody. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Teresa Akinji. My apologies with my internet and the frozen laptop from Ibadan, and thank you to Her Excellency for standing in at that particular moment. Thank you, Prof.
It's actually Dr. Nobel Studio.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor. I really appreciate it. Thanks to Prof. Teresa Akenji, for your presentation. We really appreciate the insights that you have shared, the conclusions and your recommendations, and this will be taken forward after the webinar. Thank you very much, ma'am. We now move on to have the third speaker. Our third speaker for this webinar this morning is Dr. Baya Guamoche. She is an expert in molecular immunology and physiology and currently serving as a lecturer at Tlemcen University in Algeria. Over to you, Dr. Baya.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please carry on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you have my presentation?
Yes, you need to go to presentation mode, please.
Okay.
Good. Yeah,
Good.
good to go. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor. So my name is Baya. I am professor at Tlemcen University, Algeria, Science Department. And I am thanking the member of this webinar for giving me the opportunity to attend this African webinar. And I am so grateful, and I try to thank also Professor Teresa for this opportunity. And my topic today is antiviral. We are going to talk about traditional medicine. And my topic is antiviral activity of herbal medicine and phytochemical against coronavirus. So, viral disease, once again, please, I need to do the... Viral disease are distressing threat, and many novel viral infections are reported through the world with very severe health issues. So coronavirus is an viral infection disease caused by a new type of contagious and pathogenic human severe acute respiratory syndrome, who is SARS-CoV-2. This viral infection is one of the most devastating pandemics in the human history. This pandemic is going worse with no approved medication or vaccine, and it's very difficult to develop vaccine since the virus can mutate genetically and the vaccine can cause side effects. Several studies has been confirmed that bioactive natural component has been very popular as supplementary therapeutic medication and has significant antiviral activity against COVID-19. In Algeria, that is located in North Africa, the population are using a lot of herbal and medicinal plants fighting against COVID-19 infection. In this presentation, we will show you some of antiviral property from some phytochemical extract, aromatic herbs, and plant against coronavirus. Among these, 4 extracts exhibit moderate to potent inhibition against COVID-19. We have like Licorice radiata,
who is red spider lily. We have also Pyrosia lingua, who is presented here in this figure A. We have also another plant who is Artemisia annua, who is known as sweet wormwood, who is presented here, and Lindera aggregata, which is an aromatic evergreen shrub, member of the laurel family. This antiviral effect of this extract were dose dependent and range from low of high concentration of extract, depending in herbal extract considered. We have in particular, we have L. radiata exhibit the most potent antiviral activity against the virus. In another investigation, some people like Hoover and Sinati confirm that an active component contained in licorice root. This active component is glycyrrhizine, exert an anti-SARS-CoV-19 effect by stopping viral replication. This molecule, glycyrrhizine, also displayed antiviral property when tested for it in vitro antiviral activity on 10 different clinical strains of SARS coronavirus. Other medicinal plant and culinary spices that have been described to have antiviral property against coronavirus are, for example, flower honeysuckle, commonly known as eucalyptus tree, and Korean ginseng, who has an active secondary metabolite, ginsenoside RB1. We have also 100 of British Columbian aromatic and medicinal herbs were evaluated for antiviral effect against 7 viruses. Some phytochemical extracts were shown to possess antiviral property at the dose used. So, Nootka rose, who is Rosa nootkaana, were the most effective against enteric coronavirus. Also, respiratory syncytial virus was totally blocked by Potentilla arguta and red elderberry, who is Sambucus racemosa. Many of those investigations revealed that phytochemical extract and medicinal plant constituents have displayed antiviral property against coronavirus. The principal mode of action seems to be the inhibition, through the inhibition of viral replication. According to recent research, herbal medicine like herbs and oil may have a part to play in counteracting COVID-19, and research investigating the use of Indian medication as a therapy for manifestation of COVID-19. The research presents the molecular, the research about those medicinal plants and oil and all those plants present the molecular morphology of the virus, the potential mode of action inside the target cell, genomic similarity between COVID-19 and SARS, syndrome similarity between COVID-19, SARS, and typical flu. Existing diagnosis, current clinical study, and conventional Indian herbal medicine that may be produced as treatment directly against COVID-19. Research studies in this area are in their initial stage, and for future prospect, additional research on the identification of active substance, like the description of underlying mechanism, as well as the analysis of efficiency and probable in vivo application is recommended in order to assist the exploration of potent antiviral chemotherapeutic. Additional research should also investigate the possibility of combining this treatment with other natural ingredients or with standard medicine as multiple target solution, and may help to diminish the infection potential of a drug-resistant strains. We trust that natural remedies such as aromatic herbs, essential oil derived from medicinal plant, and pure oil component will continue to play an important role and participate in the development and advancement of anti-coronavirus drug. Considering the significant number of traditional medicinal plants that have provided good outcome, it would seem reasonable to assume that this product contains different types of antiviral components. A characterization of secondary metabolic will reveal further health benefit. The common usage of many traditional medicine for the prevention of viral infection is warranted. Eventually, the discovery and development of new antiviral agent for medicinal plant and herbs to control the threat presented by certain pathogenic viruses such as COVID-19. And at the end, we trust that natural remedies such an aromatic herbs, essential oil derived from medicinal plant, and pure oil component will continue to play an important role and participate in the development and advancement of anti-coronavirus drug. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baya. Highly appreciate your presentation.
Thank you, the professor.
Thank you. Thank you, participants. I see we now have 114 participants on board. We lost 2 or 3 participants. We went up to 117. We hope that some other people are still able to join us soon. While the commissioner was giving her opening remarks, there was an internet glitch and she could not finish her speech. Would now like to give her the opportunity to complete her opening remarks, and then we will take some question and answers, some questions. We have 4 questions already. Please, we encourage participants to leave your questions in the Q&A section, and then we'll attend to your questions after the commissioner. Over to you, ma'am, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. It's not like I'm going to complete my statement, but let me just say what I've understood from the 3 presentations. Can the host please allow my video to be processed? Thank you very much. I want to say that sincere gratitude to our sisters and distinguished speakers who have spoken. Professor Catherine Ngila, your presentation was very insightful. Mitch, please unhost. Okay. Thank you. To my boss and my sister and mentor, Professor Teresa Nkuakeji, thank you very much for that overview of women in Cameroon mitigating COVID-19. And Dr. Baya, you see, I don't know how you did it, Professor Esther. The way you arranged it is like we are moving from one part to the other in a very good strategic linkages that we are doing. Dr. Baya Gumash, thank you very much, because I've learned a lot again on antiviral activity of herbal medicine, phytochemicals against coronavirus. Yes, women are more affected. there is need for us to become more radical and aggressive in seeking solutions. Women and girls get pregnant. They are mothers, they are wives, they are sisters, and whatever affects a member of the family affects the women. So imagine the problematics of teenage pregnancies since the advent of COVID-19. It's terrible and particularly pathetic because parents are at home. Everybody is locked down. How do they get pregnant? How do they do it? How do they get out of the watchful eyes of their parents? For me, I'm aghast. So how do we stop this when lives are being destroyed, particularly when these kids get pregnant and are abandoned? The other thing I learned again is the fourth industrial revolution and women's response to online platforms. The issue of teaching our girls life skills for me is very important because I'm a member of the board of UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning. If they get pregnant, why do we send them out? There is FAWE, Forum for African Women Educationists. They created a model school in Lusaka where pregnant girls go back to school. And then there is a day center for them to keep their children or their babies. So when it's time to breastfeed, they go and breastfeed. We need more of those centers in many of our African countries. Pregnancy is not a deterrent to what your brain can actually achieve. Now, how much do African countries put in R&D? A big question, and I'm happy that it was said, less than 1%. And African Union member states have agreed that 1% GDP should be put on R&D. Yet, many countries are not yet there. The other thing I've learned is the triple role of women as reproductive home managers, as productive, as community. In all these areas, we have a role to play, and we cannot keep our hands akimbo. All hands must be on deck to fight the effects of COVID-19 in all areas of life. Because when you talk about food security and subsistence agriculture, women are part of it. When you speak about health itself, it concerns women more than men. I'm even surprised they are saying men are dying more than women. I'm surprised to hear that. And even the effects of COVID-19 in the curriculum is very important because it creates sensitization and awareness. I was in Ethiopia. Everybody on the street wears a mask. My director said when he got to Waga, it was like there was no COVID. People are not even following the simplest of even wearing a mask. So we need to sensitize ourselves on the danger of this. And Dr. Bayer, the novel viral disease, you said, causes distressing threats. And COVID-19 is a contagious pathogenic. You know, you went into the jargon of the disease itself. So it means that Professor Catherine Ngila and Professor Theresia Nkwa-Akeji have given us how it affects people from the East Africa all over, and then down to Cameroon, and then now let's even know more about the disease. Now it has no vaccine because it says the virus can mutate easily, and the bioactive natural compounds that is rich in the African pharmacopoeia can actually give a panacea to what is happening. Then why are we not using our phytocopoeia to fight this disease? How do we capacitate our African traditional doctors to help us in mitigating COVID-19? How do we use our ministries of scientific research and our African scientists and researchers to create a clinical protocol from our traditional medicine to help us fight COVID-19? And that is where we need to collate all our efforts in strategic linkages across regions and continentally. So with that, I just want to say we are here to rub minds on efforts towards a pathway of solutions to COVID-19. What has been done or doing in our various fields that can help upscale all the 55 nations of Africa and get insights on the outlook of the new world post-COVID-19, bearing in mind that the certainties are unpredicted as the situation is still evolving. I'm very happy that our responses today we are giving seems to be a pathway, but we also have it in mind that our responses today might not be effective tomorrow. So distinguished participants, with these few insights on our responses to COVID-19 in Africa, I believe that by the time we are through with this webinar, we will be able to have productive insights and conclusions that can help Africa. So over to you, Professor Esther. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I highly appreciate the recap, very, very insightful. In fact, we need to promote you from being the chief hostess now to one of the speakers, actually.
This is copying and pasting from the participants who have spoken.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We really appreciate. We now move on to question and answer. I see a number of questions now posed. So I will take the first three and allow the speakers to respond. I also try to assign some of the questions to the speakers as well. The first question, I think this will go to Prof. Ngila. The question says, are the COVID-19 statistics in Africa low because the levels of preparedness by the African governments were high, as supported by African Academy of Sciences? Or is it just God's mercy? I think that question will be answered by Prof. Ngila. The second question, I think Prof. Teresia will be the best person to attempt the question. It says, how has mental health affected women, especially during the COVID-19 era? The third question, which I think the best person to address this question is the Commissioner, Her Excellency. The question says, is there any research presently being sponsored by the African Union to the discovery of the COVID-19 vaccine? So these are the first three questions. Over to Prof. Ngila. And then after Prof. Ngila, Prof. Teresa, then Her Excellency. I will take the next three questions again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Facilitator, Professor Esther. So the question about why do we find low numbers in Africa, compared to Europe and the Americas. I think one of the reasons why we have got low numbers is because we don't have that high capacity of testing. If we just look at focus on Africa alone, and you look at the number of cases that South Africa is able to test, you realize that South Africa seems to be having so many numbers who are infected. But in actual sense, it's because they've got a high capacity of testing. If you test 1,000 per day, like in some times we do in Kenya, then you will only get those few numbers that you are getting. The other question is there random testing, is sampling? Because if you don't do random sampling and you are going to just sample one particular region, then you are likely to find low numbers. So there's a range of reasons why numbers in Africa are not picking up. And this is particularly and most important because of the low capacity that African countries have in terms of testing. I think that is my take on that. But the African Academy of Sciences obviously is collecting a lot of data as to what is happening around the globe, particularly in Africa, definitely. And maybe we'll be able to, update the African continent as to what is happening in terms of, this range of things that we are talking about. Is it because of genetic? And I don't think that has been approved. And maybe people in the medical section could be able to throw some light on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Catherine. Over to Prof. Teresa, please.
Thank you very much. On the mental health issue, it's not surprising that women are affected mentally, because if you go back to the triple role of women, as I exhibited on the slide, you can see that she's virtually doing everything. And then to start with, the woman is the most affected when it comes to poverty. And then with the COVID-19 pandemic, she still has to worry about feeding the family, taking care of the sick. She has to worry about teenage children getting pregnant. Who takes care of the child? She has to worry about psychological and physical violence when it exists in our home. And on top of it all, less access to health care for herself. So you can see what the burden would be. All of this, plus the mental health issues. So as the commissioner said, we really have to look at put in place aggressive strategies to mitigate all of this, and especially the mental health of the woman, because if you are not healthy to begin with, you cannot even effectively play the role that has, the society demands, your family demands on you. So I am glad the commissioner is here, and maybe we look into how we can pump some money to take care of the mental health of women. So thank you. That's what I can say.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you, Your Excellency. The question on vaccine, please. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yes, there is a research on vaccine production, but it is in the preliminary stage at PAMVAC, the PAMVAC and the African Center for Disease Control. So we are at the preliminary stage, and I can tell you we have a state-of-art infrastructure at PAMVAC located at Debisit, and they have accreditation and certification from the World Health Organization. So whatever comes out of PAMVAC is recognized worldwide at that move. So they also have drug development with the Ministry of Innovation, Ethiopia. That one is currently ongoing. And right now, I heard somebody talking about testing. If we can know about testing. The African Union, PAMVAC, is also doing testing for COVID-19. And that right now we have a capacity for 150 tests per day. But should the need arise, we will increase up to double. So every day they do testing at the African Union Commission for people who come into the African Union to do their testing. And it is working. And that testing is important. It is very important for us to know as our status, particularly as some people are asymptomatic. So what do we do? How do they become? I don't know if I can use the word. I'm not a scientist, don't laugh at me. Is it the word vectors of transmitting the disease? I'm not sure. I just know that there's something like they talk about vectors. I don't know much. That is your field. So that is the answer I have for that for now. We are doing something. There's a research on vaccine production, but it is in the preliminary stage at PAMVAC and with the African Center for Disease Control, which we commonly call the African CDC, the African CDC. And then the PAMVAC is also working with drug development with the Ministry of Innovation of Ethiopia. And right now, we are also doing testings under PAMVAC for AUC. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Much appreciated. We now move on to the next 3 questions. We also have some people giving in some humble opinions. I will also read off some of them. The 4th question we have in the Q&A says, poverty has been a major problem in Africa. With COVID-19, poverty has increased by almost 200%. What practical role has the African Union taken to ameliorate its impact on women in the past 6 months, especially in food security? This question will be taken by Her Excellency. Let me go through, let's have 2 more questions. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Will you send us the PowerPoint slides that we will discuss with the speakers? If there's no proprietary issues, slides will be shared. Women are more affected, but men die more. I guess it's a paradox. It's best for both genders to always work hand in hand for a sustainable impact. Just my humble view. The next one says, COVID-19 has pushed African women to deeper poverty. It is disheartening to learn that girls are resorting to prostitution to buy essential biological needs like sanitary pads. Something needs to be done. Yeah, working on that. A.O. Da Silva, great efforts on the part of assessing the medicinal resources of our indigenous herbs, but we need to do more in the area of packaging for easy access and affordability. Is African Union doing anything regarding that? I think most of the questions are for Your Excellency. Maybe we want to take these 2, and then we move on again. Over to you, Ma.
I spoke about the African Scientific Research Innovation Council. That was a decision of the African Union Head of Governments in 1987, but which actually was implemented in 2018 when we launched ASRIC under STRC. STRC is a Science Technology Research Council located in Abuja. So we now launched ASRIC, the African Scientific Research Innovation Council under STRC. And when we had COVID, ASRIC as a body came up with 4 pillars. And one of the pillars is the 3rd one, which speaks about African indigenous knowledge and traditional medicine. And you know, ASRIC is mostly coordinated by the association, African Academy of Science. And most of the people who are on the board are from the African Academy of Science, the scientists from African Academy of Science. Yes, it is important. We are trying to coordinate African pharmacopoeia under that 3rd pillar. And one of the things we discussed in the ministerial with the ministers of scientific research, I think in August, was that there is need for there to be strategic linkages. Look at what happened in Madagascar when the president came out and spoke about, is it Artemisia, in regulating COVID-19. People fought it. But now we are discovering the reason why we feel that, and as Dr. Bayer has presented, the reason why we feel that African pharmacopoeia can respond to COVID-19 is because the very symptoms of COVID-19, this is for me, from a lay point of view, have been treated over the years with African herbal medicine. Now, if we are able to capacitate our African traditional doctors to bring the medications or the herbal plants or remedies that speak to each of these symptoms, then we can be able to boost our immune system and mitigate some of those symptoms through using those herbal symptoms. But how do we translate those medicinal plants to have a clinical protocol? And when they say you need to take 500 milligrams, 250 milligrams, like when you talk about azithromycin, you need to take 500 milligrams. How do you measure 5 milligrams when you boil our herbal medicine? So for me, this drug discovery is something we need to do. How to translate those herbal medicines to the modern way that we take it, so that the toxicity of the medications will not affect people. And then we can have a more reliable protocol on these medications. So yes, ASRIC is working towards that. But not only towards that, many African member states have taken to looking at their own traditional medicine and to find out how it can mitigate COVID-19. It's being done across the states of, across the countries in the continent. So we are working towards that. But let's form regional centers where we can work together and have a greater impact. bringing the richness of each region in their different herbal medicine. Like when Dr. Bayer was presenting, I heard her talking about red lily. I was just writing because red spider lily, fern, sweet wormwood, that is the Artemisia, and then she said something about Lindera aggregata. In Cameroon, they have their own medicinal plants. I will not speak about that because I know that Dr. Njip is online. She will speak more about that. But I think much is being done. That is the first question on what Africa is doing on our own traditional medicine. I think I did not get the second question. Is it the one of food security?
Your Excellency, the question is on medicinal using herbs, that
Yes.
ease of affordability, and what is there anything that African Union is doing to promote the use of African medicinal plants?
Yes, through that third pillar of ASTRIC, what we are doing under the African Scientific Research Innovation Council. But again, member states themselves have taken responsibility. They have taken responsibility to be using their own traditional medicine. There are some member states who are already working on that. Remember, when COVID started, some people made the slogan that the African streets will be littered with corpses, but God forbid it has not happened. Now, the question is, why is it that we Africans are not responding to the prophecy of, I want to use in quotes, Eurocentric people, where they have said that Africa will not be able to cope? But you see the way it is going, we are coping. What is it in our natural, maybe food or whatever that we do that is helping us cope with it, that we are not having the extremities found in other countries, in other so-called first world or developed world, the extremities we find in those countries? Why are we not looking at it? Why are we not having those experiences here in Africa that is considered to be third world, etc.? So it is because member states have taken responsibility, and many of the member states are looking inwards, African solutions to African challenges. So the answer to that is yes. Because, you know, implementation takes place at the level of member states, not at our secretariat at the African Union Commission in Addis Ababa. But what they did was that at the onset, when this thing started, the African CDC immediately called for a meeting through the Department of Social Affairs, because the African CDC is launched under the commissioner, my sister, Commissioner Mira, under the African Center for Disease Control. So the African CDC, through the director, Dr. Johnny Kengason, called for a meeting of all African ministers of health to start thinking of a response mechanism to COVID-19 before Africa, the continent, is having an onslaught. And I'm sure that has really helped the way many African countries are mitigating COVID-19. And of course, some of them are going inwards to look at their medicinal plants or their African pharmacopoeia on how to cope with this.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We're running out of time for question and answer. We'll take two last questions and then we'll move on to the fourth speaker. The question one is addressed to Prof. Theresia. The question is, how do you see the future of university education in the new post-COVID context? What strategies do you consider essential in the African context? The second question is directed to Dr. Bayer. The question is, did you try curcumin, C-U-R-C-U-M-I-N? So over to Prof. Theresia to answer the question, the future of university education in the post-COVID, and then we'll take Dr. Bayer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to draw from the experience of the University of Bamenda, how we managed to finish up the second semester in the light of this pandemic. And I am sure that too pertains to the rest of the university, since we have been working very closely with the Minister of State, Minister of Higher Education, to assure that the universities resumed. In March, there was a lockdown. And then June 1st, all the universities in Cameroon resumed classes. And what we did, we were instructed to do, was to provide face masks free of charge to all our students, create water points for washing of hands and soap and sanitizers, and respect physical distancing. And so to start with, in my university, we reopened in phases. So at any one time, we did not have more than 5,000 persons on campus, so that we could spread lectures and examinations all over, use all our facilities. But then we also developed our LMS platform for online teaching. And we used the Moodle. And that helped a lot. It was a new thing, and there was resistance. And then the digital divide, because the students are in particular areas that do not have a good internet. You see the challenges we've been having here, even with Prof. Sarah in Cameroon coming on and off. We still have that digital divide, the problem. But we're working to improve on that, and we are beginning to see that digital learning is here to stay. And all we need to do is to improve it. We have UNICEF that is working with higher education. We have other partnerships that from other universities. University of Bamenda is establishing a partnership with Temple University in the United States, all to help boost our online teaching platform. So that's what I can say. Online teaching platform, we have to improve on it. Camtel, that supplies us with the company that supplies internet. They're putting a package for all the universities in Cameroon that is affordable to help us improve internet and therefore online teaching delivery. So those are the remarks I can make here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. I highly appreciate your response to the question. The last question we'll be taking for this session is to Prof. Baya. The question is, have you tried curcumin? And I see another question came in quickly to ask that how is traditional medicine organized in Algeria? I should share some insights into traditional medicine generally in Algeria, and also to tell us if you have tried curcumin. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So the traditional medicine in Algeria is used randomly. We don't have any dose, or people are using those plants just randomly by experience. And I know something that actually the European and American laboratory and the research people from America and Europe, they come here to Algeria, and they go to the poor area where people don't have access to medicine and to drugs, and they ask people about the plant they're using and from how long they're using this plant. And from this, they develop a pharmacopée about this plant, antiviral plant, many plant, dermatological plant against, for example, against the lupus, against the, against also plant using as for arthritis. So they ask those poor people from how long they are using those plants. And if they tell them since a long time, for example, since 20 years, they took the plant and they study on those plants. But the people here are using this plant randomly. So the scope of this, actually with the pandemic, I'm telling you that we have a lot of land, but we couldn't do any study because the university is locked, the laboratory are locked, so we are not able to do any research. Everything is locked. But the aim or our objective is to take this plant and to present the process of herbal preparation by herbal preparation production, from selecting plant raw material to herbal remedy, like for example, making tea, mixture, drug, gel, or capsule. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I highly appreciate your response. Without much ado, we now move on to have the fourth speaker. I will now introduce the fourth speaker. Our fourth speaker for this webinar is Professor Refiwe Mafuya. She's an epidemiologist and currently serving as the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research at the Northwest University in South Africa. Over to you, Prof. Mafuya. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Esther. I'm just sharing my screen. Yes.
Kindly go on to presentation mode. All right, thank you.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, happy Women's Month to you all. And thank you for the interesting discussion that we've just been having. I feel honored that Her Excellency, Prof. Sarah Anya Agbo, invited me to be part of this remarkable panel of women in science and in leadership. And I believe that a few drops of science will disinfect ignorance and prejudice. And I think that's what we are trying to do here, sharing facts and experiences. Our title is Heterogeneity of COVID-19 across South Africa and Africa, leveraging data aligned to local contexts. Our departure point is that human populations are very heterogeneous. They are not homogeneous. Within the African continent itself, there's a lot of heterogeneity. And within the globe, there's a lot of heterogeneity. Therefore, it is important that as we continue to discuss on COVID-19, we look at local contexts and local data. As you know, there are clinical, immunological, socio-demographic, geographic heterogeneities. So in this presentation, I will demonstrate these heterogeneities and make some proposition in terms of hypotheses that are coming through and the kind of interventions or what should guide our interventions going forward. My presentation is based on the work that we did since COVID-19 started. We have 3 publications, and one of them is in press that looks at the global burden of influenza from 2017 to 2019 and COVID-19. So we want to learn, from the past and see if there are lessons that can be drawn and applied to COVID-19, and also an article on epidemiologic heterogeneity and necessity of contextually relevant transmission models, and I'll talk to that a bit, as well as the utility of the 2009 H1N1 pandemic data and the point here is that pandemics are not starting now. We've had pandemics in the past, we will have pandemics in the future. What is it that we can learn? Because as you've seen with COVID, we've been using ongoing data, our surveillance data, to try and project what is likely to happen. Are there no lessons that we can learn from past pandemics? And I'll demonstrate that in my presentation. So in terms of the global epidemiology of COVID-19, we know it started in China, and we know that we've got more than 23 million confirmed cases and more than 800,000 deaths. And again, my emphasis point is the extreme homogeneity that one will observe in both geography and in population in terms of morbidity and mortality, and in terms of other pandemics that we've had and the lessons we can learn. Yeah, looking at the distribution of COVID-19 cases across regions, one clearly sees the heterogeneity that I was talking about. As you can see, the American and European regions, followed by East Africa, Asia, have the highest prevalence of COVID-19. Meanwhile, Africa, there in green, is at the lower end, and this shows, clearly that Africa is one of the continents with the lowest rates in terms of number of cases compared to other regions, and there has been various hypotheses in this regard that we will talk to in a few moments. But it was really, this is kind of a paradoxical situation, because many people would have expected that, given the fact that we've got limited preventative measures and weaker health systems and barriers to testing and potentially higher numbers of vulnerable populations, that COVID-19 will hit us very hard. But you will see in my future slides that actually, when it comes to pandemics, the Southern Hemisphere has consistently had lower proportions of cases, and you'll see when we talk about H1N1, and that pattern has been consistent. And the question is why? It is good news, and it doesn't mean we should be complacent, but we need to start figuring out why. Is it because we are immunologically resistant? Is it because of past pandemics that we have developed immunity, some certain level of immunity over certain pandemics? These are questions that still need to be answered. And earlier on, there was a comment with regard to testing as to whether the low infection rates are due to our testing capabilities as a continent. Yes, indeed, we know that countries are not capacitated the same way. We know also that the developed world has got more infrastructure than we do in Africa. But strikingly, it turns out that testing in Africa is comparable to other regions. When you look at the distribution of COVID-19 cases and deaths per 1 million inhabitants per continent, Mustafa et al. Have found that the testing rates in Africa are just as comparable. So this is some of the new information that is coming forth. If you look at the graphs, the dotted lines, they actually show the number of tests performed per number of detected cases, and indeed one sees some comparability there. So we need so the reality of the situation is the low burden of COVID-19, as we are beginning to see, cannot be explained by limited testing. This is the facts as we have them. Maybe as we evolve with learning more about COVID-19, we can say a different story. But this is very consistent with other pandemics that we have experienced in the past, where the northern hemisphere would generally have higher proportions, and the southern hemisphere would have lower proportions of pandemic rates. And here we looked at influenza and across the regions of the world between 2017 and 2019. And again, we found that sub-Saharan Africa has the lowest rates in terms of influenza cases. We explored the relationship between the global burden of influenza and COVID-19, not because they are the same. As we know, COVID-19 is immunologically new to humans, but we did this because they are both lipid-enveloped viruses. So when we looked at the historical patterns of regional influenza burden, we observed this heterogeneity again, that the sub-Saharan Africa has the lowest infection rates, like I have mentioned. So this actually to us suggests that there could be a shared modes of transmission, although the morbidity is definitely differential. Influenza does not kill as many, like it did not rapidly kill as many people as, I'm sorry, COVID, yes, influenza does, of course, we've got huge mortalities, but does not rapidly kill as many people as COVID-19. We believe that there are lessons that we still can learn because the pattern is more or less the same as we have seen with COVID-19 and also as we have seen with H1N1, and I'll talk about H1N1 in a few moments. And again, we observe that the highest rates of COVID-19 are in South Africa, and South Africa, in the same vein, comes second in terms of influenza. And you see the rest of the distributions as reflected on the table, again, showing some consistency with COVID-19. And the question is, what is it that we can learn when we look at the rank order of top 15 countries by COVID-19 burden versus influenza over the last 3 years, 2019, 2018, and 2017. This is data that is available to us in our local context that we believe we can learn from. Are the determinants of this not playing a factor? Those are the research questions that begin to emerge. So again, we know that as of 23rd August, we had more than 900,000 cases and 19,000 deaths from COVID, and this cannot be undermined. Of the 54 African countries, 8 account for more than 70% of the cases, and South Africa and Algeria account for 70% of all deaths. So assumptions of homogeneity have resulted in us failing to accurately predict COVID-19 trajectory in Africa. It is good enough, of course, to look at the world and to learn and take what works, but no one size fits all. That is the point. There's extreme heterogeneity. Yes, we can also learn from the rich agricultural context of Africa and the medicinal properties that we can gain from our local medicines. But as we do that, we need to make sure that we utilize our limited resources in a focused, targeted manner. In other words, we cannot take what is happening in China or in Europe or in America, or project the epidemic curve necessarily according to that without consideration of the local context. So this also by Ibrahim Ayode et al. Shows again the heterogeneity of cases and death in 52 African countries. Again, South Africa is the hardest hit country in the African continent. The question is why? What is it that makes South Africa more vulnerable? So here, I'm not necessarily giving evidence with regard to the reasons as to why the heterogeneity, but what I wanted to project is the fact that we are extremely heterogeneous. There are social, economic, cultural, environmental, demographic issues that are definitely part of the equation, and the question would be, which are those? And that, for me, is the cause for more research. Yeah, we also looked at utility of the 2009 H1N1 data in understanding the transmission potential and estimating what the COVID-19 burden will look like in South Africa. And I've already alluded to this before. The population level morbidity and mortality of COVID-19 was lower in South Africa compared to countries in the Northern Hemisphere. And we saw similar transmission dynamics of COVID-19 with that of H1N1, in the sense that initially highest numbers of cases of COVID-19 were in the same 3 provinces that were observed during the H1N1 period. And we also have observed that similarly, COVID-19 transitioned to lower socioeconomic groups after a period of time. And these were communities that had overcrowding and therefore could not practice much of the non-pharmacological interventions, not having enough potable water or regular potable water, poor sanitation, unemployment, and so on, which made them more vulnerable. The same was observed during the H1N1 period. And we also, in the same way, observed that with H1N1, metabolic conditions, co-infections with HIV and TB, and disruption of healthcare services, although with COVID-19 is to a greater extent, that these these co-infections and comorbidities were quite instrumental in increasing disease severity and mortality during H1N1 period, as it is the case with COVID-19. And we are seeing now that COVID-19 incidence is declining as we transition from winter to spring, and the same was observed with H1N1. Of course, there are possibilities of second wave of COVID-19. We will learn as we go, as we evolve. But the point we are trying to make is, what is it that we can learn from past pandemics, instead of operating from a clean slate, as if we have never experienced pandemics before. This is very critical, even in terms of preparation for future pandemics. So the impacts of COVID-19, we argue, morbidity and mortality in South Africa will differ or may differ from other African countries, just like they will differ from other parts of the world. So local data, it becomes quite critical so that we come up with evidence-based solutions and when we target our interventions. So some of the hypotheses that various authors are giving as to why Africa has a low burden of COVID-19, because now we know that testing rates are not necessarily at this juncture the reason for low rates as we initially thought. So it's early implementation of COVID-19 interventions, and thanks to our leadership from AU to country level, regional levels, South Africa was quite prompt in that regard, and experience in dealing with infectious diseases outbreaks. We've had quite a number of them, and one of the explanations that is coming forward needing to be tested also is because Africa has a younger population, relatively, and environmental factors. Is it because of our temperatures? Is it, those are, does the virus behave differently in different temperatures, and is that why, are we immune because of past pandemics that are of a similar nature? Those are the kind of things we need to check, the immune profiles, and so on. Do we differ from Europeans and Americans? And our proposition in terms of research for COVID-19 in Africa is that we need to do some epidemiologic research that leverages serological data to characterize the true incidence and burden of COVID-19 in Africa. We need to evaluate biological, behavioral, and environmental determinants of COVID-19 infection, severity, and mortality in Africa. We need to look at competing health risks and their effect. And by this, we are referring to other chronic conditions that are being disrupted due to COVID-19 and people dying because of those rather than COVID-19 and so on. We need to use available data and historical data on respiratory pathogens to inform better predictive models of COVID-19, like I've mentioned. Clinical research evaluate the outcomes of COVID-19 patients in Africa in a different context, characterize immune profiles and response among African patients with COVID-19, and vaccine research. We also believe that we need to do some implementation science research where we evaluate COVID-19 interventions in Africa and test different models of implementing COVID-19 interventions, lest we intervene amiss. We also need some health, economic, and systems research to estimate deaths directly and indirectly due to COVID-19, so that the impact is quantified. And we need differentiated care models of service provision for other diseases during COVID-19, as we have seen that people die, due to other conditions that are not being taken care of. And we have also, alongside the research that we've been doing, we tried to share with the community in order to create awareness of the evidence as we were generating it. I wish to acknowledge the colleagues that have worked with me on this. As you can see, it's institutions from the US and leading science institutions in South Africa. We are really hoping that we continue to generate more evidence that will help our policymakers as they make tough decisions on what to prioritize. But key for now is to underscore the heterogeneity of COVID-19 in Africa, it will be a huge mistake to have a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. Yes, there are commonalities that we can draw from, but there are certainly differences that need to be taken into consideration. As I close, let me invite you to celebrate the remainder of Women's Month by getting the book that we've just published on women holding the knife's edge, journeys of Black female scientists in South Africa. And I want to read this part of the foreword by Dr. Mampila, which I believe summarizes what was mentioned here about women in science. To be born in a developing country is like competing in a race with your arms tied behind your back. To be born a female is to compete with your arms tied behind your back and blindfolded too. So the authors of this groundbreaking book are giving a front row view of the lives of women who have entered this male-dominated world and the challenges that they have had to pass through, especially with regard to racism and sexism. Please, we invite you to read as we continue to encourage more women to come on board when pandemics of this nature come in order to contribute to the solutions that we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Mafuya. Really appreciate your presentation on the homogeneity of cases and deaths resulting from COVID-19 on the African continent, leveraging data aligned to local context. Thank you very much. Thank you. I see we still have our participants intact. Thank you for holding on. We'll be rounding up soon. We now move on to our fifth presenter, and that is Professor Peace Babalola. Professor Babalola is a professor of pharmaceutical chemistry and currently serving as the Vice Chancellor of the Crestland University in Nigeria. Over to you, Professor Babalola. Thank you very much.
Can I be allowed to share my screen?
Yes, please. Please proceed. Mitch?
I'm not.
You're not able to?
Okay.
Mitch?
It is open.
All right, thank you.
I said I cannot share my screen while others are participating. Can I?
Mitch, can you assist?
Yeah.
All right.
Please try again.
Okay.
Sorry, Professor Facilitator, Professor.
Yes, please.
The chat is hacked and there's a lot of abusive language, so maybe you can shut down the chat panel.
Oh, okay. Mitch, kindly shut down the chat channel. Mitch?
Noted, noted, Professor. The offending participant has been blocked, and we are working to remove all those language.
All right, thank you. So we then proceed over to Professor Babalola. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I want to say good afternoon to everybody and a morning. Here, and I thank you for this opportunity. I pay my respect to Her Excellency, our Commissioner in African Union. I will go on to talk about this topic, and I'm going to be dwelling a lot on plants and herbs and spices from West Africa, where I come from. I hope you can hear me. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I want to talk a bit about this virus. I know we know about it. I want to use a layman's language. The SARS-CoV-2 virus, of course, is a new strain, and it causes common cold. You know, we all have common cold, but it goes further to severe acute respiratory syndrome, which we call SARS, and Middle East respiratory syndrome, which we call MAS. The virus does not cause the sickness per se, but it triggers of excessive immune response that causes inflammation of the pulmonary vesicles in our lung area, and so affects gas exchange. That's why you have the problem with oxygen, okay? So this inflammatory reaction is triggered by a substance, a messenger substance called cytokines. So you'll be hearing things like cytokines, and it's produced by the lungs. So the lungs, very important. The sickest, or those that are severely ill with COVID-19, have high levels of this cytokine in their blood, causing what we call cytokine storm. Now, overproduction of reactive oxygen, again, you know, reactive oxygen is not good for us. It induces what we call oxidative stress responses, and also contributes to acute lung injury. Therefore, being a respiratory illness, it affects parts of the body that we use to breathe: our nose, throat, lungs. That's why we have the symptoms that we have. So what are these symptoms? They include cough, fever, chills, pain, body pain, headache, fatigue, sore throat, loss of taste, loss of smell, shortness of breath, which I have tried to explain due to the oxygen exchange, abdominal pain. That's why some people vomit, some go to toilet, some have diarrhea, runny nose, catarrh. Actually, in a particular study, which I looked into, each of these following symptoms have been reported by more than 50% of the COVID patients. For example, 84 patients have reported cough, fever by 80%, muscle pain by 63%, chills by 63%, fatigue by 62%, headache 59%, shortness of breath 57%. There are others, but by more 50% of the patients have reported this. And those of us in Africa, we know a lot of these symptoms mimic malaria, you know. Then we will look at some of these African plants, and when we're looking at them, we should have at the back of our mind the symptoms I've mentioned and the antiviral properties, which Professor Bayer mentioned as well. So I have like 4 groups here. Those that have antiviral properties. It's not exhaustive from her, there are very many, but these are some of them. Mango is actually part of it. It will interest you. Cashew is part of it. Cassava is part of it. Then we have the immune boosters, which we all eat a lot in Africa. Bitter leaf, moringa, like you heard, pumpkin. I mean, we eat that a lot in my part of the country. And then we have those we can use to manage the symptoms that I've mentioned. The spices, we use all these to cook in Africa. Ginger, garlic, onions, pepper. We use a lot of pepper, and we have all types of pepper: African pepper, capsicum, aframomum, alligator pepper, and then we eat kola nuts. Then the papaya leaves, we use that to also treat malaria and some other inflammatory diseases. Then we have those that have been proven to have antiviral properties. There's so many, but I just listed a few here. Artemisia is also part of it. So what do? They prevent these foods, this medicinal plant, they prevent. They have also bioactive compounds. Like I said, we use them as spices, vegetables, and fruits. They boost our immune system against this deadly virus. And so just imagine you've been eating them before. Like we've just heard now, our immune system could be, good enough. I mean, for some of us. These compounds, they also rich from studies. They have antibacterial properties, anti-inflammatory properties, antioxidant properties. So as I go on, just imagine the symptoms and what happens in COVID, amongst others. And so they fight this infection. They have what we call secondary metabolites, we call flavonoids and biflavonoids. Most of them have. They are rich in flavonoids and biflavonoids. Some of them have complexes of this, and so they're really rich. And once you have compounds that have these, they will have these properties listed above. So I go to some of them. The Aframomum melugueta alligator pepper. For those of us in Nigeria, I'm sure you know about it. Very tiny, very, very peppery, very, very spicy. By the time you chew it and swallow it, it even can burn your throat. So, and it's also in the family of ginger. It's a West African spice, really hot. And they use it for ceremonies. They use it to eat kola nut. Extremely important in management of viral infection. Chewing 3 to 4 seeds daily have effects. Then scientifically, it has strong antibacterial, anti-inflammatory properties. Of course, caution should be taken if patients have ulcer. And then we have the bitter kola. I know people eat bitter kola daily. There are friends I have, they're actually addicted to bitter kola. Bitter kola has a lot of antiviral properties, very effective against influenza virus. It's used for cough. You can even try it. If you've lost your voice, croaky voice, you just put it in your mouth and be chewing it little by little. Against cough, cold, catarrh, flu, bronchitis, very effective. It has also strong antibacterial, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, antiviral properties. And it's an immune booster. It has an active compound we call colaviral. Some of our professors in Ibadan have worked on this. The one here, African pepper. In my hometown, we call it Uda. You cannot cook pepper soup without this. It's very good for asthma, bronchitis, and so on. And then we go to the common ones that we all know, the ginger series. Again, been proven to have anti-inflammatory properties. It has an active compound called cisgingerol, and it is rich in zinc, and we all know what zinc does in COVID. Zinc acts like an ionophore. It's better eating fresh. For me personally, I cannot, for as long as I can, for so many years of my life, I cannot cook without ginger. It also a carminative. It helps you to, it's an anti-gas. It helps your food not to get spoiled. It's also similar. Somebody has talked about turmeric. I couldn't put everything on this slide. Turmeric is similar to ginger, and the active ingredient in turmeric is curcumin, and it is now available as a supplement. So they have similar properties. And then we have garlic, Allium sativum. We don't like it because of the odor. The odor is due to the sulfur-containing compound called allicin. I know I take the capsule of garlic every day. So it has antibacterial, anti-inflammatory properties. One important thing about garlic is it is a blood thinner, is an anticoagulant. It prevents embolism and deep vein thrombosis. So you can imagine, this is what kills a lot of people that have COVID. A lot of COVID patients die because of blood clots. A cocktail of these two called gin garlic is the most potent herbal combination in the world. Note that it busts cold and influenza viruses. Then we have onions. Onions is very good. It has all these properties, antioxidant, but above all, onions is rich in zinc as well, which is an ionophore. It works synergistically. Sorry, I missed here. It works synergistically with chloroquine against coronavirus. There is a relationship between zinc and chloroquine as ionophores. So you can eat it a lot. You can pour it on your rice. You can, eat as much as you can. Then let me just mention a bit about zinc and vitamin D. Zinc is a micronutrient. People are now taking zinc, but you have them in all these foods: mushroom, cashew, shrimps, liver, ginger, like I mentioned, onions. It's an ionophore, and it inhibits viral replication, just like quercetin. Quercetin is that active compound in onions. And when you have hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine and zinc, it makes it more there's a bioavailability, and they're able to attack the virus, especially at the early stages. So low doses of chloroquine, when combined with zinc, rapidly penetrate the virus cell and prevent severe stages of COVID-19. If you don't take it from your food, you can get zinc 40 to 50 milligrams daily. Another game changer is vitamin D3. This ramps up immunity and prevents the immune system from ticking into overdrive, which can be fatal during a COVID-19 infection. It is a lifesaver. I mean, I know an isolation center that combines all of this with vitamin D. And reports have shown, which I read, published, a high COVID-19 mortality rate in Europe was correlated with low vitamin D levels. We also know that the wavelength of the sunlight in West Africa produces the right kind of vitamin D3. So we need to spend more time in our sun. It has particular wavelength, but the one in West Africa is super near the equator. All right, let me go to the leaves now. We have the lemongrass. Lemongrass actually, it has anti-malaria properties. Again, it has antipyretic, and it's an analgesic, sorry, not anti-analgesic. It's an analgesic. It works against pain. It treats. It will reduce the pain and reduce the chills, the feverish condition. Lemongrass, you can take it as tea. Then moringa is called tree of life. This is one plant that has anything you can, almost everything you can imagine. It's an immune booster, it's used in asthma, it has anti-arthritis, it has an autoimmune property, which is this COVID is an immune disease. You can use it to treat cardiac problems and so many things. The leaves have 7 times more vitamin C than oranges and 15 times more potassium than bananas. You can chew it raw, you can cook with it, but don't overcook it. Then we have our bitter leaf. Bitter leaf is a good immune booster against COVID-19. Apart from that, it is a radical scavenger, very potent as an antioxidant. You can cook with it, you can make decoction and drink it. It's also chemopreventive. It can prevent cancer. It's rich in biflavonoids. The other one is our Artemisia annua we use as anti-malaria. That's what we have in the Madagascar drink. The scientists in Germany have released data from their labs showing that extracts of Artemisia plant are active against the virus. Vitamin C, we can't talk too much about it. All these fruits contain vitamin C. The citrus fruits, they contain, but please, in the media, we've seen people saying, oh, they are alkaline. They are not alkaline, they are acidic. So please be corrected. And they are immune boosters. People take as much as 1,000 milligrams per day, or you take a lot of these fruits. Is a water-soluble vitamin. The liposomal ones are more bioavailable. And I go on to what I call neem concussion. A lot of Nigerians are using this, and I've got oral, verbal report that this is very effective. It's a mixture of the neem tree as a Adirachta indica, pawpaw leaves, all these other garlic and ginger, and then all these fruits here. They mix all of them together, cook, and leave for 30 minutes and drink. And many people have reported effect. I know that one. And then I'm in a group. There's what we call Combi 5 herbal mixture. This is still under development, but early trials have proven that it is effective. It has ingredients we use for pepper soup as well as other ingredients. We've named it Combi 5, the team that is working on this. Then for the antiviral plants from Africa, these are the compounds that have been found to be effective against SARS, the SARS virus. We have this antiviral medicinal plant, Odenlandia affinis. These are the structures, and I don't want to bore you with it. It also has anti-HIV property. These are their structures. We have king of bitters. This is more bitter than bitter leaf. It is actually king of bitters. Andrographis paniculata. It has already been proven to have antiviral properties. This is the structure. It's also effective against various viruses, and some of these viruses that are listed here. We need clinical trials for these proven ones. Then the black seed. Black seed was used by the governor in Oyo State, and these are the properties in black seed which we can use. And then in silico, computer-aided design have proven that these properties have anti-COVID. They can tackle the virus. So that's the black seed. You can take the seed or take the oil. These have been proven by computer-aided design to be effective against the virus. Those are the compounds. Of course, we've talked about ginger, but this is one thing in ginger that have been proven to have antiviral properties, the structure here. Then this plant is from South Africa, Rapania. It has quercetin. This quercetin that I said is an ionophore. It's effective against influenza already. And from in silico, it has shown anti-SARS properties. So this we have in onions as well. Way forward. We have plants that are already screened. We need to screen more. We need facilities that will screen, that will carry out antiviral properties. We don't have some of those level laboratories. These laboratories we need now. Since we cannot travel abroad to carry out some of these tests, we need these laboratories. We need more studies. In silico, we've done some. There is a particular enzyme in the COVID virus called MPRO of coronavirus. A lot of the in silico studies have been carried out. One of the young men in my group, they have done in silico for over 1 million compounds, and they found these 3 from plants that are effective against this target enzyme. Mentoflavonoid, glaburolide, and zelanone. These are quinone, these are steroid. Recently, just last month, I won a grant from our country called a TED Fund grant for identification of potential effective therapies. And these are the 3 things we'll be looking at: antiviral screening, safety toxicological tests, and preclinical tests. And once they're good, we'll be looking at clinical trials. The Center of Drug Discovery, Development, Production, which I set up in Ibadan, we made all these herbal teas some years ago during the Ebola, and they were all made from a lot of the plants I've highlighted. They're all immune boosters, which we can take as teas. These are my references, and I want to say thank you for this opportunity. Did you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Thank you very much, Professor Banola, for your highly insightful presentation on spices and foods in Africa. This is highly insightful, and a lot of lessons learned from your presentation. Thank you so much. I will now move on to the last but not the least speaker, Dr. Rosette Unjib. Dr. Unjib is she's a senior research scientist at the Institute of Medical Research and Medicinal Plants in Cameroon. Over to you, Dr. Unjib, for your presentation as we wrap up this webinar this afternoon.
Thank you. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead and share your slides.
Hello.
Hello, please proceed. Thank you. You can.
Hello. Thank you, dear.
Please go on to slideshow. Presentation mode. Okay. Slides. Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I
Thank
proceed?
you, dear Professor, for giving me. Thank you, dear Professor, for giving me the floor. I really did all the presentation, and since the beginning of this conference, I have learned a lot. Thank you. It is an honor for me to speak in this day. I prepare my presentation in French, but Professor Esther said that I cannot do it in French. I'm trying to do it in English. I will talk about mitigating COVID-19 with medicinal plants and my plan is on the slide opposite on my screen. All the presentations say that COVID-19 is a really problem for all the world and is now a pandemic. But we don't have any conventional drug and vaccine and no technical facilities in Africa. So the treatment of COVID-19 use some drug which can mitigate the symptom of this disease. We also use the medicinal plants in the world and in Africa. So our aim is to demonstrate the role of medicinal plants in the fight against COVID. Sorry for my poor English.
I'm sorry, Dr. Genova, I thought we had interpretation. English and French interpretation are available. So you just go to interpretation and you
Sorry, Your Excellency.
Dr. Njib, there is interpretation because we asked the, is there. I can see that English and French interpretation is available.
Mitch said there's a mix-up and that they are no longer available. Please hold on, Dr. Njib. Mitch, do we now have interpreters? Mitch?
Yeah. I don't have.
No, please. It is not available at the moment.
Okay.
Oh.
So sorry, we were supposed to have them, but there was a mix-up and they were double booked. Sincere apologies about that.
I'm saying this because Dr. Monica wrote for interpretation. I forwarded it to the office of the chairperson and it was approved. That's what I'm doing. So sorry about that, Dr. Njib. Next time you speak French. I'm sorry. Because if people hear it, the 4 languages of the African Union, Arabic, Portuguese, French, and English. So we don't mandate people to speak in the language are not comfortable. Sincere apologies to you, Dr. Rosette.
Thank you, dear Excellence. So I am trying to continue in English. I was talking about the role of medicinal plants and traditional medicine against COVID-19 in Cameroon. The Cameroonian government is aware to the threat posed by the coronavirus, and it made 3 therapeutic approach. We have the treatment protocol chosen by the Ministry of Health, which use hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc. And the other therapeutic approach is the search for a vaccine, which is not yet implemented, which can mitigate the symptom of COVID-19. But the problem is that no conventional drug acts in the early stage of the disease they are not available for everyone. Sorry. For herbal medicine, no clinical trials are conducted. In our country, the government made 2 meetings, an international and interministerial meeting and a forum for exchange of information with the traditional healers, researchers, and National Assembly. At the end of these 2 meetings, we have 2 projects: the production of 4 phytomedicine and a support of traditional healers in clinical study of their drugs. These 2 projects are supported by the IMPM, which is the Institute of Medical Research and Medicinal Plant Studies. This institute have 4 centers which act together to mitigate and to eradicate the COVID-19. The first center is the Center for Research in Emerging and Emerging Disease, which is in charge of diagnosis and epidemiology. The Center of Medical Research, which is in charge of monitoring of symptomatic patients and clinical studies. The Center for Food and Nutrition Research, which is in charge of nutritional support, and our center, which is the Center for Research in Medicinal Plants and Traditional Medicine. This center is in charge to conduct the phytomedicine and support of traditional healers in testing the toxicity of drug produced. Center of Medicinal Plant Research and Traditional Medicine have the same number of men and women. We act to contribute to winning the fight against COVID-19. This center is subdivided and in 4 laboratories. The first is the Laboratory of Botany, which is in charge of the production of plant material. The Laboratory of Phytochemistry, which is in charge of extraction of the active lab of pharmacological of information. In our center, we actively try to performing the toxicity and pharmacological test of herbal drug and formulation of herbal drug against COVID-19 now. We also help the traditional healers with the study of toxicity and pharmacological study of their drugs. Their drugs have been by some patients who declare that they have recovered their health after the taking this medicine. All the plants are coming from Cameroonian flora, which is medicinal plant species, which have demonstrate the specific properties against the different symptoms of COVID-19, like anti-malarial, anti-inflammatory, and immunomodulatory. We know that 25% of the present conventional drugs are coming from the medicinal plants. For example, we can see Syncona pubescens, which is the plant which is the plant who have provided the principal active of hydroxychloroquine. In our lab, the laboratory of botany and traditional medicine, we have now cultivated many plants which are used in the treatment of some diseases like malaria, like bacterial disease, microbial disease, like inflammatory and immunodeficiency. We also have a botanical garden where we have cultivated these plants to conserve them. We also help the traditional healers to know the good method for the treatment of medicinal plants to provide their drugs. At IMPM, we say that women act how can I say? We say that women act like men in the fight against COVID-19, but there is not the same case in the world. This diagram presents that women are poorly represented in terms of scientific publication against COVID-19. Like recommendation and perspective, we say that this webinar is a good opportunity to educate women to value our plants. These plants represent a good source for discovery of new drugs. We also want to renew such initiative to enlarge the scope. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Njib, on your presentation on mitigating COVID-19 with medicinal plants. And we really appreciate your presentation, and sincere apologies regarding the interpreter. Next time we will ensure that the English and French interpreters are available. Thank you to all our participants, and huge thanks to all our distinguished speakers, and thanks to Her Excellency, the Commissioner, who has been with us since the beginning of the program up to this point. She has really shown to every one of us that as the chief hostess, she really made business on this particular webinar. Thank you very much. I will like to invite the Commissioner to give her closing remarks before I will do the final closing. Over to you, ma'am, Your Excellency, Professor Sarah, the Commissioner for Human Resources, Science and Technology at the African Union Commission. Thank you.
I'm told that the host has stop my video. Okay, thank you very much. It's been wonderful listening to the next speakers, Professor Fiwe Fasfana Mafuya, Professor Peace Babalola, and our dear sister, Dr. Rosette Christelle Njib. And I have learned a lot again in this session. Maybe at the end of the day, I'll become a producer of I think Professor Babalola said something about, is it COVID-5 or what did he call it? Is it Combi-5? Maybe I'll start producing my own COVID-5, and I will need NAFDAC or IIPM to give me registration as well. Indeed, the topic on heterogeneity of COVID-19 across South Africa and Africa and leveraging data aligned to local context is very important. And I wish that this recording of this video can actually be made available on YouTube so that people can actually access it and look at the richness of what we have done today. I'm very, very proud of all our panelists. We have learned, and it seems that we brought in the right themes that people spoke about, linking from one stage to the other. And looking at it, indeed, I will use what Professor Refiwe Fasfana Mafuya said. He said, no one size fits all. I agree with you, my sister, because when we look at the way the way it is going, we need evidence-based solution, and each country is working, contextualizing their situation in order to get a panacea for what is happening here. And the game changer is that when we start early implementation of COVID-19 interventions, then we'll have a low burden effect on the African continent. So we are refusing to have our hands tied behind our back and blindfolded, because we as women, we are coming on board and we are saying that we are refusing to compete in the race with our hands held behind. And I was very happy with the presentation from Dr. Babalola, Professor Babalola. You know, maybe this is what has helped the low burden that we have our spices, we have our natural food that we eat that is actually boosting our immune system. Because there's something you said that I've picked, and I hope many people can learn that the virus does not cause sickness. That is interesting, because we believe that it is the virus that causes sickness, those of us who are lead men. And the various symptoms that you mentioned also resonates what I said, that we have herbal medication that speaks to this. So our preventive plant of foods, medicinal plants, like we said, have a number of bioactive compounds in plants used as spices, vegetables, and fruits that can boost our immune system. The alligator that you mentioned, many of us don't eat it because it is used for elders when they want to do traditional libation. But it's interesting to know that the alligator pepper, which means in Cameroon called alakata pepper, is extremely important in managing viral infections. How do we sensitize our people? How do we sensitize them to actually go back to our indigenous Pan-Africanist values, to know that they can build their immune system even when they don't have money by the things around us? That is one big question that I have for us. And my sister, thank you very much, because Dr. Crystal, you came on board to speak in the language that you're not very, but you were able to deliver. And I'm happy for the slides that you've shown us. In essence, we are indeed working together, rubbing minds, and seeing the way we need to move forward. That is very, very important. So, distinguished speakers and esteemed participants, it is my pleasure to close this first webinar session of Women in Science. I believe all our participants who have spoken deserve a round of applause. Professor Esther Kilabi, Professor Catherine Ngila, Professor Teresia Nkua Kenji, Dr. Baya Gumush, and Professor Refiwe Fasfana Mafuya, Professor Peace Babalola, and Dr. Rosette Christelle Njib. A round of applause to each and every one of you for your great contributions. I am delighted with the rich presentations and discussion this afternoon. And with this, I have the confidence that as the custodian of the Africa we want, women in science are part of the fight against COVID-19 and any other pandemic that may happen in the future, and also in the prosperity of Africa's economy through science, technology, and innovation. I say it every day, and anywhere I have an opportunity to say, if we want to achieve the vision of Agenda 2063, that vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, let all member states, governments, stakeholders consolidate science, technology, innovation, research, and development in their different member states. We thank the speakers for the great exposition and insightful teaching that they've given to us. We have seen and heard the different angles from which women are supporting COVID-19. Despite challenging conditions women are facing, they are intervening in various research fields to find solutions to fighting COVID-19. And many of these we've heard from Professor Rufiwe, Professor Babalala, and Dr. Crystal, and Dr. Bayer. We have learned all these medicinal ways of doing things, and even the practicalities of what they are doing on the field, producing soap, etc., from the presentations we've had from Professor Teresia Nkua-Keji and even from Professor Katrin Ngila. I believe that our common desire is to deliver real results that will make a difference in people's lives and in our nation through research and innovation, so that we can strengthen Africans' visibility and influence on the global scene, and learn from and lift up one another towards a collective, lofty vision of peace and prosperity. This is the spirit of Pan-Africanism. This is the spirit of Ubuntu. Because we say, Ubuntu, I am because we are. Our existence depends on one another. I am very optimistic that as mothers, as wives, as sisters, as friends, and as women in science, that together we can fight COVID-19 in our continent. Going forward, we will not relent on our efforts as experts in our fields, our various fields, to step up our efforts to contextualize global, relevant scientific agendas that provide solutions for 1, diagnosis, 2, therapies, 3, vaccines, and 4, forecasting. It is very, very important. We heard from the speakers that the assumption of homogeneity resulted in models failing to accurately predict COVID-19 trajectory in Africa. On the other hand, we also learned that it is difficult to develop vaccine since the virus can mutate genetically and vaccines will have side effects. Hearing our speakers, I believe that the possible option for Africa is more research in the use of our medicinal plants, which we're told this afternoon has some antiviral properties and may have a part to play in counteracting COVID-19. As we close this afternoon, the big question I leave with you, esteemed participants, is this: what should we, as African women in science, report as achievements or contributions in the fight against COVID-19 when the roll call is made? How can we together take ownership of our continental programs to ensure that we have the Africa we want and that our efforts are African-driven? I believe that this series of webinars planned in the coming months will help us heighten women's contributions in STI. I therefore encourage us to publish this venture. We refuse to run the race with our hands held behind our backs. We have voices, we have faculties, and we can contribute in the nation building or in the building of the African continent. The African Union Commission, as has always done, is committed to doing everything possible to support women in science. This is time for African women in science to arise and shine, and we must play our part. God helping us that we may bequeath to our future generations a blessed, peaceful, integrated, prosperous continent as envisioned in our blueprint, Agenda 2063. On this note, I again thank you all and invite you to the second webinar that will happen soon. The details will be communicated to you all. Thank you, Dr. Idinoba, Monica, and your team in the HRSC department, that is the Department of Human Resources, Science and Technology, for coordinating this with Professor Esther Akinlabi, who is the newest director on board. She is the director of the Pan-African University for Life and Earth Sciences, including health and agriculture. Thank you very much. Thank you to all our participants again and again and again, because I cannot thank you enough for the sacrifice and time you devoted to develop all your speaking points in a way that any person on the street listening to you will understand what you are saying. So it is for this reason, I believe that the first Women in Science webinar of today, August 26th, with the title or the theme of Winning the Fight Against COVID-19 has been successfully executed. Asante Sana. Sincere regards to all of you. Thank you very much. And I invite you to some lunch here at the Pan-African University headquarters in Yaoundé.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well said. And indeed, the few thank you that you said at the end was as if you already shared notes. So I'm not going to repeat all what you have said, Your Excellency. Thank you very much. I just want to thank you very much for this initiative. Very, very highly innovative, and it's received a lot of accolades, and we're looking forward to many more of this webinar. It's planned for bi-monthly for the participants and our speakers as well. We're looking forward to the second one in the month of October, and this will be communicated to every one of us very soon. Sincere appreciation to all our distinguished speakers. In spite of your busy schedules, you were committed and able to come on board to make your presentations. We really thank you so much. And thanks to Dr. Idinoba and Nick and all the team. Really appreciate your support from the HRST. Before we close, I want to apologize to the participants over the hackers that happened during the presentation, and the technical support was able to block them out. I also like to apologize that we're not able to take more questions. We will be able to plan our time better in the next webinar. Looking forward to that. Also, apologies over the technical glitches that we had. I was out for a few minutes as well, and a couple of our speakers also had issues with the technical glitches. We hope to make things right in the next webinar series. And on this note, I want to say thank you so much. For me personally, this webinar is what I'm taking home from here is the fact that the myth around looking at African traditional doctors as witches and wizards, as it used to be when I was growing very young in the village, that era is gone. The Africa of today, looking forward to how to fight the COVID pandemic, there's a lot that the African traditional doctors have to do in coming on board with so many medicines that we can use, indigenous medicines that can be used in response to fight COVID-19. And on this note, we would like to close this webinar, and please continue to fight the good fight by keeping to the COVID protocols, wear your face mask, wash your hands regularly, and all the protocols that have been advised to each and every one of us. Let us keep ourselves safe. Let us keep Africa safe. Thank you very much for your participation. We now bring this webinar to a close. Thank you.